They're all happy. Look at them. So we're ready? All right, thank you folks for your patience. Welcome to Historic Preservation Commission for Monday, September 11th, 2017. I'm Chairperson Alderman Mark Stoyer. Roger Retzlaff is here. Dave Boyes is here. Susan Lee is excused. Janine Mead sent in a letter of resignation. She has resigned. Patty Olson I have not heard from, and Dennis Doucette,
I'm here.
hitting every light, is here. Thank you for that. All right, the approval of the minutes from August 14th and June 12th HBC meetings, and the July 26th, 2017 HBC special meeting.
We accept all of the minutes.
Okay, motion by Roger Retzlaff. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Dennis Doucette. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes. Should we just move forward with while we have it? Is anybody pressing for time?
Why don't I make a motion that we move design reviews to the next item and delay communications.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dennis Doucette. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. All right, we're gonna move. We don't have any old business listed here, so under new business, we have design reviews. The first one will be consideration with possible action on a sign permit application for 153 North Broadway. And we have a representative.
Yes.
Why don't you come on up?
Sure. Yeah, pretty straightforward design,
Okay,
non-illuminated.
let me just get your name.
Rick Lipinski, WYPISZYNSKI.
Do you live on Marshall?
I live on LaRue.
Lebanon. I have a constituent named Lipinski. They live, yeah, so,
There's a few of us around.
okay,
Yeah, I'm with Color Tech representing Ryan, the owner.
okay.
And, yeah, real straightforward double-face sign, non-illuminated.
Okay, there's a color copy of it, you've seen
You
this.
said non-illuminated?
Non-illuminated.
Okay, 'cause that
Even in the
doesn't
colored
agree
copy, it's
with,
still black and white.
information.
So, that's true.
That was, he had both of them. He decided to go with non-illuminated versus the illuminated.
Yeah, because I don't think the historic district allows for illuminated signs.
Okay, okay.
What is the material?
The materials of vinyl and aluminum, it'd be double-sided aluminum, and then with vinyl print on it of his name.
Okay. So, Rick, you're here on the behalf of this for, on Broadway and such? Okay, do you?
I'm just here, our design committee reviewed it and they approved.
Hey, Brian?
Yep.
Brian and Rick. Brian said to say hi.
Okay, Brian, well, that's good. So that helps. Any comments? What are your pleasures?
Pretty straightforward. Well, I'll move to approve this sign.
Okay. We got a motion by Roger Retzlaff. Do we have a second? Second by Dave Boyce. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
We're good, thank you.
All right.
Have a good evening.
You too. You know where to go then?
You bet.
Inspection?
You
All
bet.
right.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh,
Sixth floor.
oh, yeah, sixth floor.
Yeah, he knows.
He knows. All right, next, we have consideration with possible action on a detached garage at 826 South Quincy. That's you. Okay, come on up. And just your name again?
John Hogan?
John Hogan, and you're the owner?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
You got copies, Stephanie?
They're gonna be the packets, but if you have any extras to pass around, feel free.
Yeah, I do. I have some along.
Does everybody have a packet? We'll just take a peek at that.
I had met with the committee in June, looking
Right.
at doing attached to the existing garage with the plans. It's just not gonna look right, as well as just the cost of doing that versus a detached, so I'm looking at doing a detached.
This is the one right here?
No.
No.
It's
Oh.
item number 3.
You have, well, you got a design here. It's
Oh,
this
I
one
see.
here.
Yes,
That's this one here.
All right.
Okay, and I'm trying to think what the issue was last time. I mean, you did come in here.
It was probably, I don't know that there was any issue, it was approved, as I recall, that there was, it was just an attached, 14-foot addition to the existing garage.
Yeah, I think we only
And
have
trying
a
to-
minor recommendation.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I don't remember anything.
trying to stay with the original design of the home,
Okay.
but again, that has since changed.
What's the material cladding the house?
The home is stucco,
Okay,
but the garage will probably not be stucco, the detached garage.
so you're showing some sort of siding that
Um,
anticipates vinyl?
Yeah, more than likely do. We're gonna look at doing some kind of a full stucco, but if not, it'd just be siding. Is that what you guys are looking at in this plan?
Yeah.
You might check and see if you can get a sheathing panel that has finish on one side, like a stucco-like material.
Yeah, we did look into that a little bit. I did get a price on stuccoing the existing garage because it was sided, and then also stuccoing this garage, but the cost is really prohibitive to match the actual stucco that's on the home.
Sure.
So we do prefer to go with some kind of a stucco look, but last resort is going with a lap siding. But
Even in vinyl, there's I don't know what it's called, but it's kind of a flush siding. It's vertical, and has, a little kind of a route at the top, so that all the faces are
okay.
flat, so that would be a little more appropriate.
Yeah, and again, that's the look we're gonna try and go with, but.
The other thing is, this is showing a flat soffit. I don't know, is that what you have on the house?
The house is not, the house is whatever you call it, where it tucks up at an angle, follows the roof line.
Okay, so I'd recommend doing that also, and so letting the soffit go up against the
Mhm.
rafters,
Sure.
and instead of.
Yeah, and when I talked to the planner, the designer, I just gave him the original home plans, and he matched the roof line. He wouldn't have known that was, but that's not a problem to do that.
If we, no, I think, if we
Sure.
move forward with that, we would.
Yeah, that's not a problem to do that.
So did you want to,
Okay.
anybody else has a comment on this? If not, I would entertain a motion. With maybe that, in fact, with what you brought forward.
I'll recommend approval of the garage design with recommendation that the owner consider a flat flush siding material and sloping the soffit, the overhanging soffit, so it matches the character of the soffit on the main house.
Okay. Are you fine with that?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. We have a motion in, do we have a second? Second by Dennis Doucette. Okay, any other consideration, all in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Very good.
Okay, we'll go that route.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for your time.
Maybe I just started writing that, maybe we could switch. So we could read that motion back. Other recommended. Okay, Roger will finish that. All right, moving on. We have consideration with possible action on a building permit application for a new window opening at 1118 South Monroe Avenue. Come forward.
Hello again.
Hello again. And, let's see. Oh, there's another sheet below it, sorry. I just need your name for the record again.
Don Heaster, Heaster.
Okay. Okay, I think I remember stopping in before.
And we did the siding, so that's going on right now, and that's why we look at doing the window.
Okay. So we're looking at this right here, correct? So you're talking
Yes.
about
No, in the back there.
Oh, in the back, I'm sorry.
Here. You see where?
So you're trying, so basically what you're doing is you're gonna try to match that? as
No,
far-
there was
or-
the bathroom window, which you can't see, it's behind the chimney.
Okay,
But there were 3 windows along that side of the house. I don't know when they were changed, but 2 of them were boarded up.
okay,
So
so
we're looking
that,
to put one of them back in.
and that would have been original to the house?
Yes,
Okay, and then, of course, the new ones are being added,
right.
okay. Now, that addition you added, how big is that?
On the back?
Yeah, on the backside? I mean, is that,
16 by 20 maybe?
okay,
That was done before we bought the house.
okay. Thank you. All right, Roger, you familiar with this? This one a little bit?
Yeah,
So-
we've
I think-
seen this a couple of times.
Yeah, all right.
I just agree with staff recommendation that the new window match the existing windows.
And it would match the ones that are going in upstairs. So it's a double hung window, same size, same width at least as the one that was there originally. But not as tall, only because it would go down below the lower cabinets in the kitchen if we did that.
Sorry, you're good with that then?
So it'll line up with the one in the bathroom on the top, but it wouldn't come down as far.
Okay. So,
So the same types of windows that are going in upstairs that were approved last time, all those.
All right.
so is the window going in behind the chimney?
Yes. It's hard to get a picture in there because there's not a lot of room between the house
Yep.
next door and ours.
All right, well, I would entertain a motion. I think you brought up a good point that the recommendation that the city has brought forward is something that you're fine with. I don't know if anybody else has any comments on this. Otherwise, I would suggest a motion. Okay. Move to approve with the recommendation, or as far as the city goes, or just move forward? Okay. Roger, you want to?
I'll second that.
Okay, all right.
What was the recommendation from the
Well, the
city?
recommendation, it just
It's
says,
just,
oh, go ahead, read it.
strongly recommends that the new window match the existing window along the same wall with respect to overall dimensions and exterior wall window casings. And you've already mentioned, you can't get the sill as low as you'd like,
Right.
so, but you're gonna keep the head at the same height.
Keep the head the same height,
It's
same
gonna match
trim around the outside.
configuration.
Right. It'll look just like the window, only shorter.
So that's acceptable.
It's pretty much hidden from the street.
Yeah, it is non-architectural. I think last time too, we talked about the siding, someone suggested scalloping above the window. We're gonna do it above the windows. We can't go all the way down to the bottom of the eaves, but we'll go to the tops of all the windows on all the street-facing views.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Thank you.
Very good, Don.
So we go upstairs for a permit then?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Not right now, though, I think we're
Yeah,
close.
we're close. So we don't be there.
Yeah, all you gotta do is order it, that's the big thing.
Yeah.
It takes a month or whatever.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Will you have a party at your house when we're done?
Oh, sure. When the kitchen's finished.
All right. Good luck. All right. Well, let's, we got these here. Let me just get back to our, let's get back to our original communication then. Request by Alderman Stoyer to look at the feasibility and costs of a ground penetrating radar, GPR, to locate the exact site of the old Fort Howard buildings. Now, Stephanie, I was gonna ask you that. It says the recommendation was to receive and place on file.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
We have two basic recommendations. Either we refer to staff to further work on a project, or we receive and place on file, just to know that the communication was received by the body.
Okay.
There isn't much that staff can do, because it's asking for money, and we don't really allocate where those things go. So to receive and place on file just notes that this body received it, but to bring any further action, it would have to go to somewhere else that'd be able to create money for it.
Okay. So, you know, a lot of times when something is received and placed on file, it's just kind of, that's it,
You
generally.
can also do it with the recommendation to bring it elsewhere or to have
Right.
somebody bring it to council. but-
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Well, thank you for that clarification. All right, well, as you know, the Larson Green property and such, it's been quite a history over the last number of years with development and various things that were wished for and not wished for, and things that have developed over time. There is, the properties are being redeveloped, and I've had a chance to tour some of them. They're very nice, some very interesting things going on down in that area. Some time back, the city council asked for, it was brought forward by Alderman Weary to get a 1/2 acre of land in the back on the Larson Green property to be put into some type of historic designation, if you will. You know, it could be a replica, it could have been, a kiosk, something. That hasn't been decided yet, but, and I think the parties, the developers and that are aware of that. I think that there was also a push from the Mayor's Beautification Committee. They asked for 1.75 acres of land rather than the 0.5. And according to, I have to refresh my memory on that, but it sounds like the council rejected that. Wendy, does that ring a bell? Offhand? I think, so, I guess, Mr. Jim O'Rourke here brought up something at one of our last meetings, talking about some of the different folks that have come forward and done some work on this property. It goes back quite a while. We had Jim Yingst used to work at the museum, and he did some ground penetrating work a little bit in some of the area. Les Van Horn was the Brown County surveyor. He did work there as well. Mary Jane Herber's been involved. Jim O'Rourke's been involved a bit, along with your friend, his name again?
Jeff Giordani.
Jeff Giordani. I think one of the things that I got a letter from our museum director, Beth Lemke, and this is something that, if people want to chime in, they can. She stated that I firmly believe that the site developer should be aware of the state permitting and permissions section of the document. The state has assigned the site a number, and the land developer should be following the state regulations. I would recommend that your committee request to whichever city committee that oversees the development, perhaps RDA, a communication from the developer on the process that they have or have not filed with the state. She said that, if things move forward to take a look at the property a little bit further, that they would like to be involved in some way. Now, with that being said, and Wendy, maybe you can chime in a little bit, I know the city's been moving forward, with development, if you will, and Brian, if you want to chime in on that as well, that'd be fine. I know that, I talked briefly with Kevin Bonk about this, and I think, he feels that, the process has been moving ahead pretty well for the development of that property. So with that being said, I think it's important that there be some designation, something talking about the fort. Granted that we're not looking for a total redevelopment of the building, it just wouldn't be feasible, I don't believe. But it is the oldest piece of property in the state of Wisconsin, in terms of the state of Wisconsin. So it does have a lot of historical meaning, if you will. So I would just open this up for conversation right now. Being a historical preservation commission, we're very important. We're very much in favor of looking at historical significance of this. And Roger, if you could mention something, you brought up something some time ago about Fort Howard, as far as, the city talking about this is a historic piece of property. I don't know if, is there a way you could reiterate that? Well, a little bit?
We did, pass a resolution identifying Fort Howard site as a historic site in the city of Green Bay. So any development on the site technically has to come before this commission for review.
And I think that's where it gets interesting, because we are an advisory committee, so,
Well, it doesn't matter, it's still, the ordinance says that any, work to a historic site in the city has to come before the commission for review. It doesn't say that our recommendations
Okay.
have to be
Alright.
followed, but the requirement is to come before the commission for review. It's a public airing of the process of what is planned for the development,
Okay.
so that the community can have some,
Input.
issue an opinion, have some input into
Mhm.
this process, so.
Well, Wendy, is there anything from the city standpoint that you could add to this, as far as, your thoughts, as far as development? Or,
Yeah, they're working on an option for this property, so it's still going through the process for the
When you
development
say-
agreement.
So there are no plans being developed at this point, it's just,
there's potential option.
it's an
be
ownership
bringing that-
issue, how to transfer the property to the developer?
They're working through the development agreement with the developer on this parcel. I know that they're working closely with the Department of Public Works and with their engineers to figure out infrastructure and all of the portions of development that go along with that.
Does the site qualify as a brownfield?
Yes.
Okay, so they have to do two assessments, right? Preliminary and a final assessment of the
That's
site.
correct.
So,
Well, and if the committee has nothing else, I'd like to open the floor up for other comments. David?
I'm saying the way things go in general, like, when they expanded the property to the auto museum and stuff like that, some things, maybe they're kind of interesting, but in the way of progress, you can't save everything. It's like the guy at the junkyard told me, you just can't save everything. But I think maybe the best we could possibly do would be to have like a little bit of a portion of the building with a glass display where maybe the city and county could chip in a little bit to have them have an area that the public could see after hours or any time, that where they could see a little bit of a display, kind of like the display you see when you come into the northern building, that could change constantly. Maybe the school system could encourage the kids to sponsor different changes to the display to highlight different aspects of what was going on at that time. And then that would involve the community, and then there'd be a chance to have like a walkway that would go near this area.
Well, and I know the museum has mentioned to me that they would be more than willing to work with whoever to help put up, they have the expertise to put up murals or different display boards, if you will. They've done that type of work, so they'd be willing to work with us. So there would be a cost, like anything else. Anyway, I'd like to hear from other folks that are here that might want to speak on the matter.
move to open the floor.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, floor is now open.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Jim O'Rourke, 2339 Oakwood Avenue. I'm just a history buff. I'm not a history major by any means. Actually, I'm a realtor, and my friend Jeff is a realtor, and we just happen to have a lot of interest in the history of the city, and we happen to have access to old records through the title companies and the old abstracts. So that's how we know the stories of all the farm parcels from 200 years ago. We have those abstracts. What The reason that I'm here today is that I did get a chance to talk with Beth over at Neville and with Kevin, and they absolutely do not want to interfere in the development of that site. So, they've suggested that a professional archaeologist, a contract archaeologist, be available and be on site, but they don't want to be responsible for any delays whatsoever with regards to the development of that site. They think that it's very special, very significant, but they're not contract archaeologists. They do have ground penetrating radar. That's a vast but not conclusive evidence of where buildings might have been. So if last time I was here, I was able to pull together some bids from professional ground penetrating radar companies. They're all around $2,500 to do a flat 2-acre site in the city of Green Bay. They would not give us a historical report, they would just give us a technical report on the types of structures that they found underneath the ground. The developer, I don't believe, is required to do anything extraordinary except to kind of document whatever they dig up. But I think it'd be better to have a plan for the city to at least scan the site for $2,500 and hire somebody to maybe write a report of some kind. That would probably cost another $2,500. But for $5,000, you could get a pretty good understanding of what to expect once they start breaking ground on those condominium sites and the whole bit. I'm also on the Mayor's Beautification Committee, and we had proposed educational green space to kind of where you think that the most interesting site would be, just have that set up as an archaeological dig and just have an ongoing dig set like they have up at Mackinac. So I was able to visit Mackinac last month, had a family wedding up there, and they've been digging that for 50 years. So once you get started and you open up that can of worms on going into an archaeological dig, you could be there a long time. So
How would that impact the project itself?
I'm not a professional in this, but my understanding is that you don't want to find Native American burial sites, right? There's certain things that are very well protected, and then there's certain things that are just kind of interesting. And I think that under the laws, you just have an interesting site, much less a protected site. So if you were to dig it, and you were to dig up the American fort, that's an interesting site, but it's not, I don't believe it raises to the level of a national site that would trigger a lot of the additional preservation things. You wouldn't be finding, there was a old cemetery there, but that's in a different location than the fort. That's where the 1.75 acres that you have, that comes up, was just the remaining perimeter of the fort buildings that was there. The city owns that. I would recommend scanning the fort, scanning the hospital site, and then having just at least a map of where the buildings were. And from there, you could then move forward and just have a virtual fort, someplace we're moving into, the STEM, the science and technology. We don't have the resources to rebuild a fort. We can look at what other forts look like and have the kids be doing a lot of this stuff on computers now. You can go over to Heritage Hill, you can see the actual buildings, and then you can pick it up virtually and drop it on the site, and you have your virtual fort.
So you're saying once the area is developed, the chances to do that would be minimal?
It'll all be gone, and you won't be able to verify. You'll say, everybody kind of thinks this is where the fort was, but without some sort of proof of some kind, which would be at least the ground penetrating radar, which should, if you do a map overlay of, we've all seen the maps, of where we think the fort buildings were, and then if you do a ground penetrating radar and you happen to find anomalies that look like building foundations that match where you think that the buildings were, that's a pretty good indication that that was the actual fort site. So that's what you would have. And then from there, at least you'd have a place to tell the stories of earliest Green Bay. Now, Green Bay is completely different than all of the other forts around the country, because number one, we were a fort site, and all the NFL sites, a lot of the NFL cities are also fort sites. Chicago, Detroit, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, a lot of the old fort sites in the Midwest have become NFL teams. It's sites for NFL teams, for good reason. So if people were coming in for the games, and they want to do a little extra, because you have to stay 3 days when you come in for a game, hotel-wise, you'd have some reason to come on down and tell the story. We can tell the story about our fort, but we can also tell the story about their town too. So they're gonna like coming on downtown, not just staying out at the stadium district. So that's what I like the best. Our story is one of camaraderie instead of conquest, because most of the forts that you see, people were living inside the forts. In Chicago, the Chicago histories, if you go down and look at the bridge where the Fort Dearborn is, it's the Fort Dearborn Massacre, and it's the classic, violence. Whereas in here, we were a trade organization, so we were a trade route, which is and we're one of the few places where you can tell that trading story and have it authentic. So I think that as long as we have the site that we can say, this was actually it, this is where the buildings were, even though the buildings are no longer here, then you can tell those stories that go back 200 years and 200 years before that, and then another 200 years into the future. So you have a lot here, and this is the time to spend, $2,500, $3,000, and at least scan the site, see so you can document it, so when you tell people this is where the fort was, you can say, and here's our evidence.
Go ahead.
Well, how big is the site overall?
The total site was 3 acres. It's been split by a third by the railroad, so there's 1.75 acres left. So when I got the bids last month, I called up the guys, and it's a lot easier to do it today than it was 7 years ago when I started this. And prices have dropped on those because there's more people doing it. I would ask to scan 2 acres worth of land, and, just with the bids, they said, well, 2 acres worth of land, it'll take us 1 day and then a day to prepare the report. It's 2 days worth of work, it's $2,500 from 2 different companies.
I guess the bigger question is, what's your desired outcome? Because if you're talking about a dig, that...
No dig. Just a scan, non-intrusive. So that's where we stop, because in the past, there were some digs over there, and there were questions on how effective they were. So you don't want to go down that road. So the professional archaeologists would be the ones, if something's required to be on site, you have to have somebody who knows what they're looking at. The ground penetrating radar could be done strictly by professionals, okay, who do that. And then they could turn over that report to both the city and to the museum. And
Do you feel that Kevin does that type of work, correct?
Yeah.
Hasn't he done some of that? I'm just wondering if there's something that we already have as resources, at the city or the county, that could do that work.
The answer is those resources are here locally, but because of his professional affiliations, if he's going to do something, he's ethically required to do it completely. Okay, so he's already written the report for the small section that he did, and the time that you spend in the field is 1/3, the time that it takes to write a report. Writing the report and doing all the research takes a lot of time. So, their recommendation was that yes, they have that equipment, but they'd rather not be involved with it, because then they would have to write full reports, do everything else that goes along with writing an archaeological project.
Right, you were saying though that this other committee or group would be able to do that fairly shortly.
Correct, so the
I
professionals
guess
who are out there that do this for utility companies, for developers, who are looking to find out what's underneath the ground before they develop something, they would go in and do a straight analysis. They'd say, there's stones under there. They're not gonna say that they're fort stones, they're just saying, they're gonna say, that looks like a building foundation to me. That looks like a fireplace foundation to me. If you're telling me, these things are consistent. They wouldn't give an archaeological review, which is a whole nother step that if Neville were involved, they would kind of feel obligated that they have to write a full report.
Why doesn't Neville want to be involved in this?
They don't want, the
Seemed to be
politics
right
of
up their
it, well, the politics of it is that this has been around a long time, the site's been dug up a couple times, they've done a little bit of work over there, it took them a long time to write up their reports to do it, and they would rather have the city take care of the site. So it's like, if you ask a doctor to take a look at you, he looks at you, he's obligated to tell you everything he knows, so.
Roger, do you have something that you want
Well,
to? I mean, I got some
I
thoughts
think
too.
my concern is that, my understanding of the site is that it was heavily cut and filled.
Correct.
Over its history. And I don't think anybody's done a feasibility study based on historical topography to determine if it's even possible to find foundations. I mean, if the fort was sitting on a high point and that high point was cut down, those foundations wouldn't be more than 3 or 4 feet deep. And if they cut more than 3 or 4 feet, everything's gone. There's nothing to see with a ground penetrating radar. So until we have, a document that, makes an assessment of the site and says, yes, a ground penetrating radar may,
It may
show
or may not.
something because
Right.
the structures would have been within, vertical proximity to the topography we have out there now, then, that would make sense.
So they would have cut off the hill, okay, so on a cut and fill, they would have cut the hill, and my understanding is they used horses and scrapers, okay? So they leveled it off for the.
Right, but that's,
So this would be,
regardless.
this would be where all the fill went into the river between the current bulkhead, okay, so that's all fill at the lower end. So
Right.
if there were buildings left, they'd be the buildings closest to the railroad. The original plan that we had asked for when I first came here was to look for the warehouse, which is on the other side of the railroad tracks on private property. And that's where we got started, because that was much lower and very close, and a lot of that was fill. And, so with the fastest, least expensive way that you could get it completed would be to have objective professionals come in, spend $2,500, have them do their magic, have them write just the engineering report on it, and be done with it without having to speculate on who put. All they would say is that looks like there's foundations under there. They wouldn't be speculating on whose foundation, who put those foundations there.
Has anybody approached the developer about taking on the cost?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure about that. I think that's one of the things we have to talk about, because I think at the museum, when I was talking to those folks, they said that they would like to see something on that order. If we looked at it from a city standpoint, where it would be taxpayer money, we'd have to really make a good case for that. And what revenue streams would we be looking at? We'd have to look at various committees, budgets, things like that.
Well,
So,
the one thing, again, we don't know what is in the development agreement, or if there is a development agreement. The place you would put, any requirements for assessing the site historically is in that development agreement.
This seems like a
When it's
minor,
published, because
seems
it's
like a
gotta be
minor
part of the
amount for the
contract.
developer.
right.
To be able to have a fact that says that their project, has historical significance.
So, but the worry that everybody has is that they'll find something, okay? That's the worry, that you find something. Everybody wants just a clean bill of health, and if it was only
There's
$2,500
no question they're gonna find something that's.
It's how
that's been
important-
dug up
how
and
important it
Stuff
is.
has been dumped, you know, so.
Yeah, so those-
There's no question they're gonna find stuff. The question is, what are they gonna find? And, you know, I'm not so sure, you know, that that's what really matters. What matters is somehow providing a means of identifying, you know, what that property was for, how it is important to the city and to the region, you know, in whatever is built there. You know, it's not just a question of, okay, we found some foundations, we'll dig them up, and we'll store them in a warehouse on the Heritage Hill site. Big deal. You know, and then they just build whatever they want there, and you have no sense
Sense of place, so that's.
Right, sense of the place.
I'm also on the Fox Wisconsin Heritage Parkway, which does the history from Green Bay to the Mississippi River. And the sense of place is a big thing, and a place to tell the stories. So the minimum that I think that we need is to be able to say, this is where that story happened. In Chicago, they put bronze markers, bronze markers in the sidewalk, and that's what you got, okay? So I was kind of hoping for something more than that, but they put the bronze marker in the sidewalk and the, reliefs on the bridge abutments, and that's it.
Well, it intrigues me at least to, without digging up the entire property, at least if there was some way to find the outline of the buildings. Are you saying that, well, with the ground penetrating radar, though, I think one of the issues that we have is the fact that, like Roger said, things have been dug up and moved and all sorts of things, so it's a roll of the dice.
It's a cut and fill, and you may find nothing, you may find, a couple buildings. If you take a look at the bird's eye, in my living room at home, I have the bird's eye view of, from 1867, okay, which shows a couple it shows a railroad site in there, a couple of the buildings still there after the railroads were going in, and 2 chimneys from the burned down buildings that had just burned down a couple years before. So those are in the 1867 bird's eye, and that would give you a pretty good idea of what you'd be looking for.
David?
Reframe this a little bit. Could you describe the overall timeline of all these projects and the sense of urgency?
They're moving forward with, tomorrow they're having another meeting on this site with the RDA at 1:30. So they're moving forward with it. Start to finish, you could have the ground penetrating radar done in 2 weeks. Everybody says they need, a week to 10 days to make sure that they got some free time. It's 1 day in the field, maybe 2 days in the field, and then the rest is, just some time on the computer. But it's, 1 to 2 days in the field, and, they said that their schedules are, they just need a week lead time, and they can do it.
Could you describe the contact you had with the people that do that kind of work? Like the frequency of connections or timeline on what you've done with them recently?
I've never used their services, okay? So, the first time, we actually got pricing and everything was when Walmart was gonna do it. Okay, so we got the first pricing with Walmart guys. At that time, it was $5,000 to do it. Now, just last month, I spoke to Encompass Inspection, National Ground Penetrating Radar, 2 places with services in Wisconsin, Madison, Green Bay. They can come all over the state. And, one bid $2,000, the other said $2,600. So, but they would do it as if you were just building a building and you wanted to know what's underneath.
I have another question. I was wondering if,
What's that?
I was wondering if they would consider the opportunity to maybe hold a classroom where they could charge admission for a class on what they're doing for that particular project
I
as
think
part of
that's-
an offset of the project.
So I think that there's a tremendous public relations opportunity here for them to promote their materials, but I stopped at just asking them what the price was. I think that, you know, if the mayor asked them to, said, you know, can you come on up here and come to one of the games and do your magic, I'm sure that somebody would be open to that suggestion.
Well, if there's a chance for the public to kind of get in on it as
Mhm.
like sitting in a class or something like that, maybe they would have like donations going towards the work.
Well, what I would be willing, before I came here, you know, I decided that I'd be willing to donate $500 and 50 hours worth of work. Okay, so that's something that I would personally be able to do. The Neville Museum is doing parkology. They are doing ground penetrating radar up at the old Rockwood site up by Bayshore Park. They do, Neville will do archaeological surveys of county property that they own. And that's where they stop. So that's kind of what they said they do.
Would you consider contacting the media to see if they could do a story on this?
They would, they've done the story, they did the story, they did 2 stories when we first, the media contacted me after I was here 7 years ago. I just came to talk about it 7 years ago, and for some reason, the media saw it in the minutes, and they gave a contact here, and there was a front page, you know, they did a front page thing in the Press Gazette, and then the Milwaukee Journal saw it, and they came on up and they did another story on it. So the media likes that.
Well, if there's a way to orchestrate all these different things within the timeline, maybe we should figure out a way to do that.
Everybody, I don't want to step on toes, so somebody needs to be invited. The people who actually own the property, because I'm a big advocate of property rights, so the people who own the property need to say, okay, we're interested, and move forward with it. But I've presented how the plan could be brought to fruition, but we need to be invited by the property owners.
How easy is it to connect with the property owners to just ask
Well,
a
it's the
question?
city, it's the mayor, okay?
Oh, okay.
Okay, and it's the RDA. And Brent Weichert has already had his property done at Titletown Brewery, so they've already had their property done. Now the property owner is the RDA in the city. But they, you know, like I said, you know, they just want to make sure that, I don't think that $2,500 is gonna make a big difference one way or another. And, you know, they have to, they're the ones who have to be on board. And I don't want to force them to do anything, so I don't want to screw up their development plans.
Sure.
So that's what you have to be aware of,
Thank you.
okay? Thank you very much. And like I said, you know, I came here about 7 years ago, and we just talked, and then all of a sudden, you know, the press after one of the meetings here saw your minutes, and they gave us a call, and then, you know, we've been doing them ever since. Thanks.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Bill Mindel,
Name and
120.
address for the record.
Bill Mindel, 125 West Mission Road. I also write for Green Bay Development News. Just for a little clarification on this, the Mayor's Beautification Committee met last week and voted to request the city spend $5,000 for this ground penetrating radar survey. They suggested that it be done by the Neville Public Museum, but as Jim has suggested, the Neville doesn't sound like it's interested in doing that work, so it would have to be another contracted archaeologist to do that. So that committee has made this recommendation to, I believe, the Historic Preservation Commission, that this project be supported. I personally would support this project. I think this might be your last chance to get in on the property before they really start doing some more excavation. There could be some groundbreaking, if not later this fall, then next year on development of the rail yard property, which is where it's now hauled. So I would support this ground penetrating radar survey. And if the city can't put up the $5,000, I would suggest, as Dennis has suggested, that the developer, DDL Holdings, be approached. for putting up the money to support this. My interaction with this group is that they're very supportive of local history. They very much want to know the history of the properties that they deal with, and they might be very well supportive of this. I think time is of the essence. I would ask that the commission not dither on this for 2 or 3 or 4 months, but make a decision within the next month or so to proceed with this or not. And my suggestion would be that the chair of the commission, if he's willing to do it, consider setting up a meeting with Jim Kratovich of DDL Holdings. Maybe have Wendy Townsend in on the meeting, maybe have Jim O'Rourke in on the meeting, anyone else who would like to see if DDL would indeed be interested in doing this survey.
Actually, that's a good point. I had thought of having a special meeting,
Yeah.
within a couple of weeks.
And then to report back to the commission at its meeting next month as to whether they're supportive of this or not. And if not, then to pursue maybe getting funding for this survey either through the RDA or the Plan Commission, whatever is appropriate, wherever the
Right,
funding would be
right.
appropriate. But this is your last chance to get in on some very important piece of property and having to do with the history of Green Bay. Yes, it has been disturbed. Yes, there has been some survey work done on it in the past, but this would complete the project, if you will, and I think it would be very much of interest to the history of Green Bay and others as to what exactly is there, if anything, on the property. If there's any remnants, if there's any burial sites, if there's any remnants of the fort, whatever, or evidence of the previous railroad history of the property, whatever might be found there.
What is the overall value of the project that's been done there? It's been developed?
At first blush, my understanding is that that entire area is going to be about 16 million. Is that something?
I'm trying to think of the price tag they've put on it too. That could be.
I'm talking about the entire Morrison Green, and I'm just speaking off the cuff on that. I don't
There's a
have the
phase
exact number.
1 north of Kellogg and
Yeah,
phase 2
there's
south of Kellogg.
various phases.
So, piggybacking on what Roger said earlier, then the real concern for the developer would be that they find something they don't want to find. That would-
I mean, that is a possibility.
That would impact the project.
There's that.
So we're not aware of any Native American burial grounds, so that's the big thing.
Is there anything else that they could find that would impact the project?
Well, we have located the documentation that says where a likely military burial ground would be, but that's currently next to the retaining pond, next to the cannery, under the parking lot. So that site was, when they were digging the engine house, that's on these maps, that's where they found European-style caskets. So they think that that's where, the military cemetery would have been, but there's no evidence, nobody's ever mentioned any other cemeteries or burials near the fort site. So you're just gonna have buildings.
Well, I think the next step is to meet with the developer.
Right, let me just piggyback a little bit. As far as the parking lot and things in that order, ground penetrating radar cannot be used on a parking lot?
Sure it can.
Okay.
Goes through.
It's just, okay.
Yeah, so it'll go, 6-8 feet.
I think in a perfect world, I would like to see where the outline of the fort is for a virtual map.
Correct.
I think something like that would be a fantastic educational tool. I think it would be, like I said, Fort Dearborn, they just have a couple of markers. I think this would be a unique opportunity. So I'm very much in favor of meeting with the developers, like you said, Bill, and any city staff or whoever may, and we'll get that together. That's my thought.
And not to take it up in this meeting, but maybe consideration should be given for city development agreements, period, going forward, that any kind of historical preservation element that might be tied to a site, there's something there that at least allows us to look at it and maybe at the developer's cost, if it's a minor cost like that. I mean, that's nothing cost.
I don't know the legal requirements, but Roger has mentioned that if the commission has designated this a historic property, that there's required to be some How did you word that, Roger?
I'm sure you
Well,
will eloquently.
the point of it is so that whatever development occurs there comes before the commission
Right,
for the community
Review.
to be able to issue an opinion with respect to the historic resource that is the Fort Howard site.
so there might be a requirement to that effect anyway, even if it's only an advisory review.
Well, yeah, the review is advisory, but the requirement to appear,
Mandatory.
show the, what is considered for the historic resource.
Good point.
As part of the ordinance.
Good
Right.
point, yeah.
So,
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you, Jim, as well. All right, anybody else to speak on the matter? Okay. All right, we have a motion to move back to regular order.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye, all opposed? Okay. What are your wishes? I concur that we need, we'll set up a meeting in the next couple of weeks, probably after city council, but I will make the attempt to have a meeting with owners, the folks from DDL, also the city, the museum, if need be, and other interested parties. And we will have a special meeting on that, and we'll discuss all the points that were brought up today, which I think are all very valid. So,
Well, yeah. I have a question here.
Yes.
There's, with respect to the communication.
right, we have to deal with the communication
Well,
accordingly.
No, let's finish, go ahead. Is there a report, or is there some document that addresses the feasibility and costs of the ground penetrating radar? Is there a report? Is there something published that we can actually receive and place on file?
This is what I think I gave this last week, but that's,
May have. Let me look here.
so that's the bids that I received, there's the maps of the property, and that at least gives you the contact information and the overall proposal.
I think you did email this to me, but
Okay, well, I'll
if you
ju-
could re-email that to me.
Okay, so I can give that to you, and I'll,
That could be the document we're looking at.
So I think, we should all have a chance to review this. It should be part of our packet if we're going to be making a decision on something like this.
Well, it's not necessarily this exact proposal, it's just in general, if you guys would like to make any recommendation about finding a feasibility report, putting one on file, having it go through a proper channel, really anything at this point.
well, I can give you a cleaner copy of that, but
Well,
in order to keep moving forward, that would be the starting point.
to be honest with you, I'd like to, this is kind of putting the cart before the horse, because we don't know what's going on the site. We have not seen any kind of presentation on how any development at that site is going to affect any historic resources that are there. So, and even the railroad is and all of the activity that went on with respect to the railroad, all of that's a historic resource. So I think it would be contingent on the part of the RDA and the Community Development Department to make a presentation to the Historic Preservation Commission on what kind of development is planned and how they are going to address historic resources for the site.
I did attend the RDA meeting last month, and the plan for the site where you're most likely to find the buildings is where they're planning on building the luxury condos. That has already been mapped out, that's the first phase.
Well,
Okay.
I'm just gonna ask you to hold off there, because that's.
Right, we gotta discuss.
The issue
this,
is, we're not being engaged on this issue, and I don't know that any aspect of historic resources on the site are being engaged by the two city administrative organizations that are involved. So I would propose a communication to council to require engagement by the RDA and the Community Development Department engage the HPC in review of development plans to assess any effect on the historic resources for this site, to ensure that, any potential archaeological resources are considered, and the location and the importance of the Fort Howard site is considered in the development.
Well, with that being said, we're looking at timeframes here as well, so, with this option that DDL is looking at, we meet once a month. Would you be open to the idea of having a special meeting on this?
That's fine.
That's what I'm looking at, because I think within 2 weeks. So with that being said, that could
I
be
think,
the
the issue,
communication.
we identified the Fort Howard site as historic,
Right.
City of
We've
Green
done that.
Bay,
Yes, we have.
quite a while ago.
Right.
So it's been out there, they could have come at any point and made a simple presentation,
Okay.
and
May I say something since the
Ignore
floor is still
the-
open?
the option. yes.
Well, the
That's
floor
what
isn't open right now, but
Well, it's not.
we'll make a motion to open the floor. Do we
I
have a
think,
second?
it's,
Well, just hold on.
I don't think we need to get into a lot of discussion at this
Second.
point, because what we need is a response from, the city
Offices.
departments that are pushing this development. So
Okay.
it's
I don't
only
know, that
appropriate.
seems fair to me.
If I may.
Yes.
Once something is designated as a local site, the only requirement is now what's a site plan or something that requires a building permit would have to come before this committee. So it's not being done out of order. Typically, a developer's agreement is done as the first step to make sure that the project can be secured. And then from there, they would involve anybody who would need to be involved, not only this committee, but any committee that would have a stake in it. So while you can request that they come ahead of time, they're not out of order at this point.
Well,
No site plans have been submitted and no building applications have been pulled.
So yours,
okay, well, a building application is going to be too late for us to have any influence. I mean, building, you come with a building, when you apply for a building permit, that means you've got drawings, that you've got plans established.
I'm
So-
simply regarding what our ordinance says.
Okay, well,
the
That's-
fact is that, Roger, like you said, it is a historic site. So the fact is, usually we deal with structures or buildings many times with a lot of what we deal with. But the fact that you're looking at it as a historic site, you'd be having a new building built on this historic site. So we still have some leeway there to look at it. It's important that we look at that.
Mark, if I may add, the floor was never closed. If I could just add one comment.
Well, actually, we did, I think we did
I
close
have a
it.
motion from Roger, seconded by Dennis.
Okay. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so,
I'm sorry.
okay, well, I'll make a motion to open the floor again. Do we have a second? Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
okay.
All right, Bill.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I just wanted to say I would not recommend sending a communication to the council at this point. In my opinion, I think that would just set off some alarm bells and some unnecessary concern. I think your best bet is to just talk about this with staff and with some of the other ideas that you have kind of behind the scenes and informally, and then have your special meeting or report back in a month or whatever. But at this point, I don't know that you're ready to send a communication to the council, which could be interpreted as almost adversarial or something, and I don't know if you want to establish that kind of relationship. That's just my opinion for what it's worth. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Otherwise, motion to close the floor?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, all right, well, we gotta move forward with this.
Well, somehow, I think we need to find a way for, this organization in addressing historic resources, to be able to have, some influence.
Right, no, I agree with you,
Plans
I
and-
agree. So with that being
Processes
said,
within the city. If the city's going to ignore its own organizations, what's the point?
that's true. I would like to have the opportunity to re-look at that development agreement and just see where we're at with that. they may have already addressed that. I'm sure I've looked at it, but we look at dozens and dozens of documents, so it's really, I think it would be important to look at that again, make sure that things are there that we need to look at. Well, okay, well, Roger, you were talking about too, but my proposal is to have a special meeting where we could have the interested parties come forward, give a presentation, facts and figures, maps, whatever's there that our committee could utilize to help make a proper decision on this. I feel that would be important. So I would make a motion to that effect. And I would
Clarify.
well, the motion would be to have a special meeting with the Historic Preservation Commission, to meet in a timely fashion, preferably within 2 weeks, to invite the DDL ownership, city officials, other interested parties to attend, to clarify questions on the project, and to allow the Historic Preservation Commission to eventually give its input on what we feel is important for the history of the city of Green Bay. Is that too wordy? It might
That'll work.
be. In a roundabout way.
It sounds like basic due diligence, it is pure due diligence, and I think that's a very good way to go, and I'd be all for having a special meeting.
I mean, I've added one too many sentences. What's,
I can clean it up.
you what?
I have the basic gist, so
Yeah.
we'll make that shorter. But a special meeting within the next 2 weeks with city staff, interested parties, property owners to clarify the historical integrity of the project.
Okay, I'll go with
I'll
that.
second that. Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, thank you for your input. All right, next, we have review the August 2017 building activity report. Is there anything that jumped out at you?
Not really.
There's nothing that really came out at me either, so. If not, I would entertain a motion.
Move to receive and place on file.
Second, okay. Any other discussion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, next, review city raised repair orders and demolitions. And Jason, I know that you normally go out and photograph these, don't you, or have you?
Yes. The only one for this month, I believe, was the 1235 South Fisk.
Mm-hmm.
That's a garage.
Okay,
Sent that out by email a couple weeks ago, and it's on the very back here, a couple pictures.
well, I presume the house is over 50 years old.
It's
That's-
most likely, yes, the garage maybe not.
Okay. All right, does anybody have any specific concerns about that? I don't know, right now.
It's too bad they didn't maintain it, it's kind of a cute garage. Move to receive and place on file.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Oh, sorry.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Informational, August 14, 2017 meeting follow-up.
Just a couple things to brush up on from last month's meeting. Dave, you had asked if we could put a date for each of the individual reports on our building activity report. We can, but it'd be very tedious to figure out. Our IT department would have to change the way that we pull the report, so it sounds like it's probably not worth the value that we would get out of it, considering that we do it month to month. So if we wanted to have it done, I can put in a request to IT, but they are updating our website as of today. So we might get back burner for a while. So if it's something that the committee's interested in doing, we can do it, but it's not easy, it's not a click of a button. We'd have to change the entire way the report is pulled. So if you guys find it necessary over the next couple months, looking at these reports, to have individual dates for each one pulled, we can do that. But at this point, we're gonna keep it month to month for right now. We did look into our budget and ordering plaques. I found our last order, and I've been in contact with them about ordering the plaques for this year's award recipients. So we should be getting that information this week sometime about the quote for them, but it'll probably be about the same as we've been paying, which is about $1,500.
Okay, and we have enough in our budget for that?
Yes, as far as I can tell right now.
Okay, all
Unless
right.
Jason doesn't want to get paid, then we can change that around.
Well-
I haven't been working as many hours as I should, so
So perfect.
pretty sure you
Well,
have surplus.
Does everybody want a plaque?
I have not reached out yet. I don't know if we
Okay.
want to just start ordering them and letting people decide, or if you guys usually reach
I
out
would
first to make
contact the
sure.
owners,
Okay.
whoever the recipients are, and make sure that they want to have a plaque before we actually spend the money.
That's no
on it.
cost to them,
Yeah.
so.
And then the last thing was for our loan program. I did speak with legal and the head of the department. They had said that since council has already directed where the funds go, and that could be a staff-approved project, that we don't have to do any further approvals. So staff will technically have the final approval on the loan committee. Well, I mean, we set this up like every other loan committee that we
Okay.
have. We'll have an internal committee, but they'll still get reviewed through the HPC.
That's fine, this is the thing that Jason's been working on.
So we should be good to go on that. We can start working on
Well,
that
good, well,
internally.
keep us in the loop on that.
When is the next commission meeting?
Probably October,
October 9th.
October 9th, but I'm looking at,
The council meeting?
yeah, there'll be a council meeting in between
I
there.
I meant common council, I'm sorry, I said commission, I meant common council.
Council is
Next Tuesday.
next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow.
Well, I propose that this committee make a recommendation to the council that somebody pay the power bill at the north end so that all the work that's been done doesn't get ruined. I'm serious.
Is it out there?
I've done these historical projects before, and having no power, having water intrusion that can't be pumped out with a simple sump pump in the elevator shaft, all that woodwork was redone, that could, you know, if that building's hot and it's just, and the power bill payment can just go on to the next buyer. It's just gonna, because it
All right,
could cost a
well-
lot of money.
Okay, I don't know if we handle that right here, but I will,
Well, I'm saying that we should make the recommendation because
It's an important
Well,
point.
it's
all right.
historic
Up under-
preservation, it's historic preservation. The work that's been done to date could get ruined. So, not all of it, but.
all right, so duly noted. Do we need, it's not really a point, I mean.
Well, I think, you know, Dennis's comments should be part of our meeting minutes. and
Okay.
These do get reviewed by the common council, so.
Yes.
I think you just made
Okay.
a motion now.
Well,
Use the word
Your
motion.
that would be your motion, correct?
These-
You brought it
All of
forward.
these other items are really discussion items. so.
That would be under new business or under other.
Yeah.
So with that being said, you brought that forward, was that a motion that you would
It
care to
can be
make?
on whatever you guys think it should be.
Okay. All right, I
I
understand.
just think the power should be on.
I think it's appropriate, it's an announcement that is,
Okay,
you know, identified.
we're gonna let you run with that. That sounds good, I appreciate that. Do we have a second?
Dennis, is there a way to have someone update us on the actual physical condition of that building as
No,
of today?
No, I called Kevin Bonk, he wouldn't return my call, and I heard from the mayor's chief of staff, she was very pleasant, and she said that right now the city's staying out of it until the receiver is appointed. So,
But
my
in the interim-
understanding is that the RDA has access per the development agreement, and they do. They have access per the development agreement, but
We
the
should
city has
push
chosen,
something.
the city has chosen not to be involved.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll follow up on that. David, did you second that? Did you second that? Or not?
Yeah.
Well, don't, I mean, the motion. That's a motion, let's just get a second.
Could we
I'll second.
read back the motion again one more time?
That the city should consider paying the power bill so that we can preserve whatever work's been done to date. Because
I'd second that.
contractors may not get in for another 60, 90 days, who knows?
Okay.
Sure.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That passes. All right. Next meeting date is, well,
Well, we should.
why don't we set it up right now?
Don't we need nominations for?
Oh, yes, Janine Mead resigned recently. She just said she's been on the committee for 10 years, and,
Something we said.
yeah, no, I think we're good. Just very busy, a lot of other things going on in her life, and we appreciate everything she's done, and we will figure out a way to thank her moving forward. I haven't really thought about it, but some kind of, something from our committee. So that, but we do need to have a nomination for that, and for another member, and one of the thoughts was that, you know, with us working on this preservation ordinance, that one of my thoughts would be to have someone who lives in the Astor Historic District to possibly become a member. Okay. So that's
Yeah, if
my,
you have any recommendations, please let me or Celestine know, and we can help
yes,
get him through that.
right. So we will check into that, and I'll put my feelers out there as well. John, you interested? Okay.
Well, thank you. I don't live in Green Bay.
You know, I know, but you know some people.
Well, I know some people.
By the way, off subject.
Should we end this meeting?
This committee gave a couple of preservation awards, and it influenced our decision on the contractor that we hired for the Rett Law. We hired Rodak for the Rett Law. They had 2 preservation awards here, so it pays.
It does pay. All right, our next meeting date is Monday, October 9th. Now, that's our normal Preservation Committee meeting. Now, today is the 11th. I'm looking at 25th, September 25th possibly for a special meeting. Is that anything else pressing there?
Plan commission's that night, but as long as you have it at the same time, it should be okay.
Oh, Plan Commission's at 6, correct?
You will lose your staff person at 5:30, so as long as we
Well,
can do it within an hour.
I think we should be able to do it within an hour.
Okay.
So let's go the same route.
I have lunch that day, but I'm fine in the afternoon.
4:15?
Mhm.
Okay, we'll do that, so next meeting. All right, a motion to adjourn,
Second?
all in favor? All opposed, thank you. Stephanie, here's the,
Thank you.
thank you, Roger.